I almost got erased that night, with him playing Grand Theft Auto with my life and the lives of these two others that were with me.
An Atlanta novelist is the latest person suing Sean Diddy Combs, claiming the music mogul attacked him outside of a club in New York City back in the 90s. We are going to sit down with him, and we're going to get his side of the story as he releases a book about his experience. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. Okay, let's talk about writer DeWitt Gilmore, whose pen name is Relentless Aaron, because he says Sean Diddy Combs and his entourage targeted him outside of a nightclub in 1996, allegedly shooting at him and his friends. Now he's filed a $5 million lawsuit against Combs and also Bad Boy Entertainment. And Gilmore, by the way, is actually acting as his own attorney for this. This, of course, comes as Combs is locked up in the Metropolitan Detention Center out in New York, facing federal charges in the Southern District of New York. He's accused of sex trafficking, transportation to engage in prostitution, and racketeering conspiracy. The focus of the federal case is Combs' apparent obsession with sex and fulfilling his sexual fantasies. And while that's not necessarily illegal, it's the coercion, the threats, the violence that was allegedly used to facilitate his wishes. That's what becomes a problem. Also allegedly transporting sex workers, sometimes across state lines, for the purposes of performing in these elaborate sexual performances known as freak-offs. That's what becomes the crime. That's what becomes problematic. It's not just sex trafficking that Combs is accused of, because as part of this effort to prove the racketeering conspiracy, prosecutors have listed out other crimes that Combs allegedly committed in furtherance of this criminal enterprise. Things like arson, kidnapping, bribery, obstruction of justice. So to that end, we are starting to hear more and more about alleged physical attacks committed by Sean Combs and his associates. And Combs has been accused on multiple occasions of having a short fuse. In fact, in her sexual assault lawsuit, Combs' ex-girlfriend, Cassandra Ventura, recounts multiple times when Combs had threatened to hurt people that he was in feuds with, like fellow record producer Suge Knight. He even allegedly blew up rapper Kid Cudi's car because the man had shown interest in Cassandra Ventura. And violence has become a big theme in a number of the lawsuits that he's facing right now. But remember, by the way, it was Cassandra Ventura who set all of this off after she filed her suit in November of 2023. But with that in mind, now, the latest claims of physical violence come from DeWitt Gilmore, and that's what we want to talk about. So in addition to his multi-million-dollar lawsuit, Gilmore is also taking his story public with a new book called The Night Puff Tried to Kill Me. Now, we have been trying to stay up to date on all the new Diddy developments, and for that, I got to call out our great sponsor, Upside, who helps make shows like this possible. If you don't know what Upside is, it's awesome. It is a free app that helps you get cash back when you buy gas, groceries, food, real cash back. Money that appears in your Upside app that you can then transfer right into your bank account. Look here, I used Upside to find a gas station, claimed an offer, paid with my credit card at the pump, followed the steps on the app, I got cash back. Yep, and you can use Upside at all different kinds of places, restaurants, convenience stores. So to find out how much you could earn, click the link in the description to download Upside or scan the QR code on screen. And make sure to use our promo code SIDEBAR and you'll get an extra 25 cents back on every gallon on your first tank of gas. Hope you can check it out. So let's take a closer look at the complaint. And by the way, I'm going to be speaking with them too, so stick around for that. But according to his complaint, Gilmore was with two friends at a nightclub in New York City in the summer of 1996. Now, at this time, Combs had recently started his own record label. It was Bad Boy Records, now Bad Boy Entertainment. He signed multiple hit makers like Biggie Smalls, also known as Notorious B.I.G., as well as Smalls' wife, Faith Evans. So Combs is just starting to build up this reputation, this brand as the head of a rap label. He was getting ready to release singles that would go on to be legendary. And then he encounters Gilmore and two of Gilmore's friends outside of this club. Gilmore says he was walking to his car with two friends when, according to his complaint, defendant Combs and his associates pulled up in a gold convertible with defendant Combs positioned in the passenger seat and his bodyguard driving. Defendant Combs initiated a verbal confrontation with plaintiff, taunting him with derogatory language and escalating the situation with threats of violence. His words were intended to provoke and intimidate plaintiff. The encounter rapidly intensified as defendant Combs' bodyguard and additional vehicles carrying armed associates joined to form an entourage surrounding plaintiff's vehicle. Defendant Combs and his associates blocked plaintiff's car, creating a sense of immediate danger. Defendant Combs' associates brandished firearms and shots were fired. Gilmore even says there was a car chase at one point, but he was able to get away. In his lawsuit, he is citing three claims or causes of action for relief: assault, battery, intentional infliction of emotional distress. His complaint states defendant Combs and his associates, through threats and displays of violence, willfully placed plaintiff in imminent fear of bodily harm, leading to significant emotional distress and mental anguish. Defendant Combs and his associates intentionally engaged in harmful and offensive contact with plaintiff by surrounding him with an armed entourage, firing a weapon in his presence, and creating a physically dangerous situation. And defendant's actions, including threats, the brandishing of firearms, and a deliberate attempt to intimidate and harm plaintiff, were extreme, outrageous, and intended to inflict severe emotional distress. And he's seeking $5 million in compensatory damages for emotional distress, physical harm, lost opportunities, reputational damage. According to the complaint, Gilmore also has a sworn statement about that night in the summer of 1996 from a witness. The plaintiff, Gilmore, recently reconnected with a key witness, Lance Calfee, after years of no contact. This reconnection brought forth new insight and testimonial evidence surrounding the events of that night, underscoring the intensity of the encounter with Sean Combs. Calfee's account serves as recently discovered evidence significant enough to reopen the case beyond the usual statute of limitations due to the unique circumstances of intimidation and safety concerns that delayed earlier action. Mr. Calfee's statement, obtained in September 2024, corroborates plaintiff's experiences of the attack and identifies defendant Combs as a primary instigator, providing essential new information to his filing. So essentially he's saying because this new information came to light, maybe the statute of limitations doesn't apply. Now I want to take a look at this sworn statement. Again, kind of gives you insight into Gilmore's claims. And it comes from this guy named Lance Calfee, who says that he was one of the people with Gilmore that night. And in the filing, he says, "I sensed the situation escalating rapidly and felt a distinct unease about what might happen next." Gilmore attempted to defuse the situation, encouraging Combs to avoid negativity. However, Combs continued provoking him. When Gilmore responded, challenging Combs to settle it verbally, Combs instead instructed the driver to maneuver the vehicle behind us, where several additional cars arrived, blocking our exit and creating an intimidating, threatening scene. As Combs' entourage surrounded us, his associates exited their vehicles. The tension reached a climax when I heard gunshots. My initial thought was that they were fireworks, but it became clear that firearms were being discharged. Acting instinctively, I shouted "gun" to alert Gilmore to the seriousness of the situation. Gilmore quickly reacted, starting the Jeep, and we fled through traffic in what felt like a life or death escape. The chase was chaotic, with Gilmore maneuvering through red lights and other vehicles as Combs' entourage pursued us, fully reinforcing my belief that we were in imminent danger. I've reflected on that night countless times over the years. It was not merely a brief conflict or power play. It was a deliberate, intense confrontation that appeared personal and life-threatening. That night serves as a stark reminder of the traumatic experience, one that I will never forget. Okay, so with that, I had a chance to sit down with DeWitt Gilmore. And he is, by the way, going to reference something called the CCNY event. So this was back in 1991. It was a celebrity basketball game that was held at the City College Gym in Harlem that Combs had sponsored. And it was a tragedy because there was a stampede that broke out. 9 people died, almost 30 people were injured. He references that in relation to why this feud might have started. So with that in mind, here you go, DeWitt Gilmore. All right, so I'm joined right now by DeWitt Gilmore. First of all, thank you so much for coming on. Very nice to meet you. Thank you so much for taking the time. You know, when I was reading the complaint, the first question that I had was, did you know Sean Combs at all? I was trying to understand why he might have done this, why he might have targeted you, as you say. What was the relationship? If you can start there.
Yes, Andre Harrell introduced us. I am 59 and been in the hip hop game since the beginnings. Russell Simmons was my first business partner. So when I was introduced to Sean Combs, aka Puff Daddy, I was at a bar that my friend owned in New York called Bentley's. And Andre and I had been doing business. I contracted him to perform for me on numerous occasions, as well as I bought radio time through him. He used to also he was a rapper by night, and by day he sold radio time. So this is Andre Harrell we're talking about,
Right.
the later president of Bad Boy or Uptown. I think it was Uptown Records, yeah. So anyway, we're at the bar talking, and and then Puffy walks up and he says, "Hey, this is Puffy, my intern," and that's how our relationship began.
And what was that relationship like?
Well, I'm a concert promoter for many years since I was 18, and and so that's where we connected initially on those grounds. So we wanted to do some parties together, and so what happened was we planned a basketball game. You've no doubtedly heard about CCNY and the Stampede. Well, that was actually initially my idea, and so my basketball game was scheduled for Friday, and what Puffy was supposed to play on my team. We were going to play against the Kiss Cards, which was a radio station basketball team for fundraising for nonprofits. So while I'm setting all that up, while I have flyers out, while he's on my squad, and while we're promoting on the radio on Kiss FM, he goes to Wendy Williams, which is on the same radio station, and he says, "Hey, I got an idea for a basketball game." And he schedules a basketball game at a gymnasium at CCNY, which is a college basketball stadium. And so basically that was scheduled for the day after. So basically he took my idea, went ahead, did his own. He didn't plan it well enough. He oversold the tickets, the whole thing. He had all of the names because he was a performer. He had the relationships. I'm not mad at him for using unfair advantage. I think at the time I was mad at him for taking my idea and blocking me out, but knowing what happened, I'm actually glad he did. So that's how that happened. Now, because I was a connector and I was known at the time, Curtis Lee will call me the next morning after the Stampede. He was live on the air with Lisa. It was Curtis and Lisa in the morning on ABC radio. They literally woke me up. "Hey, who's this guy Puff Daddy?" You know how Curtis talks. "Who's this guy Puff Daddy?" And so I was a thought leader, as I am today. And they asked me questions, and I answered the questions. I wasn't attacking him on the radio. I wasn't coming for him on the radio. Um, I didn't. I didn't even drop the tea that I'm giving you right now. I didn't say, "Hey, we had a basketball game scheduled for yesterday." I didn't even say that. I just basically said, "Well, yeah, he's a promoter, and this is how we make money. We put artists on shows. We do them at clubs, and I was giving him the details, and so that's how that was. And but what happened thereafter was I started getting calls from like Good Morning America and different people, different entities that wanted to have me on their platform. And Richard Bay was the first mover. He sent a limousine, and I took my security. I went to his show. It was called Nine Broadcast Plaza, and that was our Maury Povich of the day. You look young. You might have missed that era.
Well,
And
no, I mean, who's the father? I remember that, but maybe this
oh,
the
okay,
show's
that
before.
that's
Yeah,
Maury Povich.
that's Maury Povich. This is the
But
show before.
this
Yeah, I
was
got it.
this was the era before
Yeah,
that,
yeah,
which was
yeah.
Richard Bay and Nine Broadcast Plaza. And so I went on that stage, and Jesse, I was sitting there with William Kunstler on one side, Dougie Fresh on the other, and a couple of the families of the victims that had been lost. And
Yeah.
so I was called to task to answer questions, to be the glue in the situation, to explain why this happened, what could have, what, and I did. And again, didn't attack him, but I'm sitting in his seat. Be clear, I'm sitting in a seat that he would otherwise be sitting in. So I understand the angst, but there was something else that triggered that. That by the way, that was 5 or 6 years before. So he held that on his shoulders for a long time.
Oh, I was going to ask you about the time frame
and
between
we
when
had
you say
seen
this
each
happened.
other and
Yeah.
we had seen each other on numerous occasions in between. He had tried to come in my parties. I had to turn him away because he brought 10 people. We were already sold out. He came to another party of mine, that again, a line of people outside. But the promoter's respect is that, you let the promoter in because they let you in their parties. I couldn't let him in. Every time he came with 10 people. I couldn't let you in. So then came the night of the event, and or this this nonsense, this random act of violence, and coming out of a club. I'm in there doing business. I'm in there promoting, and I have a Death Row East T-shirt on. And let's be clear, that was a hot time between him and Suge Knight,
Yep.
East Coast, West Coast. We know the stories. I'm heading downtown to the end of the night. It's about midnight at the time. I go into the club. I'm in there for an hour, promoting my magazine, getting shout outs on the loudspeaker, the whole thing. And we walked out and we headed to my vehicle across the street. Me, Lance, and one of my interns.
And by the way, if you could explain who Lance is, because my understanding is Lance is now a key witness for you
Yes, for
to
sure.
corroborate what happened. So who's
Yes.
Lance?
Lance has just been security for me for years. On this night, he wasn't carrying, and he was just sitting side saddle. He was in the passenger seat. I was in the driver's seat, and Rico was in the back. And Sean Combs was in the passenger seat of a sports car, um, convertible, and his driver, which we believe is Wolf, the late Wolf, was driving, and he took Sean's, instruction, and he pulled up to my car. And so, if you can picture it, Lance is on the passenger side, which is the curb and the sidewalk, and I'm on the street side. And he pulled up, they're about a foot and a half away, and he basically he's in my face. What's up? And now in hindsight, I know that the T-shirt triggered him. I know that our untoward relationship triggered him. But be clear, probably years back, me and him are at the Palladium. Biggie and Pac are on stage doing a live version of Party and Bull. It's like a big deal. And I see him walking on the floor, and I pass him. I say, "Hey, Puff, let's, bygones be bygones." And so he waves me off first, but then he's like, "No, no, 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 no." And it's, by the way, he's alone. And so we kind of hug it out, shake hands, we squash. Now, when I say squash, I'm talking about the stuff from the CCNY and being on Richard Bay, and it's coming to a head this night because he sees this T-shirt. And I really believe that this triggered it because it was broad. It said Death Row East. It looks like I'm promoting Death Row East, and which I was, but wasn't getting paid for that. Anyway, what's up? And I'm like, look, Puff, I don't want nothing to do with your drama, man. Just keep your drama over there. I'm, we're doing our thing. It was the end of the night for me, Jesse. I was headed home. We long day, just headed home, and I lived up in Westchester, so we had a drive, and he's like, nah, you're. So he's basically inciting and triggering and trying to get me to react. And so they pull the car back to let me out of my parking space. And so we pull out. We're close to Herald Square now. By the way, Herald Square, for those of you who don't know, is where the Macy's Day Parade is staged every year for decades.
Mm-hmm.
But it's 1 a.m, and we pull up to a traffic light, and like Lance is like, he's behind you, and I shrugged. I'm like, I didn't think anything of it. Um, but the light changed. I turned. Now we're heading towards Herald Square, heading uptown direction, and his car pulls in front of mine and pulls and forces me to an island. And they have planters now there. There weren't planters then. It was just like a little embankment island, little cement divider in the road. Jump out of the truck. Lance jumps out of the truck. What the hell is going on? But the moment we jump out of the truck, we see he's not alone. It's not just him in the sports car and Wolf, and it's like these hooligans that are in four other cars that are with him. So they're like, they got us ambushed, surrounded. And Puff is coming towards me. Wolf is right behind him. I hear pop, pop. Lance at the same time is yelling, gun, gun. And immediately I jump back into my truck.
Yeah.
How all of that happened, how so close and how quickly it happened, it just fell on me. Thank God, to immediately, like, fight or flee, right?
Right.
So
Right.
So I jump in the truck, and now I'm in a stick shift. So for whatever reason I was able to jump over the island. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, no.
You
My,
want to
my
answer?
question to you is: this is a harrowing situation, and I think a lot of us are learning about it for the first time in this complaint. Why come out now in 2024 with this? Had you reported this to police? Had you said something about this in the past? Why come out now with this?
So uh, first of all, I almost got erased that night.
Yeah,
With him playing Grand Theft Auto with my life and the lives of these two others that were with me. It turned into a car chase, and that was even probably more death defying than the bullets. Just escaping him, and then eventually running towards traffic, and escaping getting hit by 18 wheeler. So the the what was going on in the cabin in that vehicle was erratic. It was a lot of rage, anxiety.
yeah,
I lived in New Rochelle at the time, and Misa and Puffy's kids also lived in New Rochelle, and we actually lived on the same street on North Avenue. Not that she knew that, but I definitely
right.
knew that. And a switch had been flipped in my mind that there was going to be street justice. I'm so glad it didn't happen that way, but a switch in my mind was street justice, not police. And I'm sorry that that's not everybody's mentality and state of mind, but for me, because it was 1 in the morning, and you don't have cameras around, it's not like the world we're in today. There's no receipts, so it could have gone either way. So you're asking me why now, and I'm getting to that, right? I was at the same time I'm doing the nighttime gig, I'm doing a daytime hustle, and the daytime hustle caught up with me. I was I had this guy had introduced me to he had actually brought checks into my business, and deposited them into my bank account, and I ended up going away for 7 years. And while I was away, I had to I had to come to terms with changing my life and my lifestyle, and I had to come to terms with what had happened with Puffy, and I had to come to terms with the way I was living, and I had to change my life. And so that's where I wrote 30 novels, and one of the books was also Derelict, which I sold to 50 Cent and G Unit Books. I'm one of the original G Unit authors, and that was actually a fictional version of what I'm telling you right now, but it's also just part one of it. And so I was getting these things off of my chest, off of my shoulders by writing them, if that makes
Yeah.
sense,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to
Mm-hmm.
make sense of
Mm-hmm.
my life. And so when I came home in 2003, of course he was popular. The J Lo thing had gone down. More he was making more money, but also there was unfinished business. Don't get me wrong, but there had also been some deaths, right? With Biggie and Pac, and so a lot. I was in kumbaya mode anyway when I came home. I wasn't like, okay, let's go back to no, it
Right.
wasn't
So
that.
so just to be clear, would you say though it's everything that's happened with Sean Combs in the past year in a way made it easier for you to come forward and tell what happened to you?
Absolutely. I feel in allegiance with all of the people that he's harmed and he's hurt. I feel that like I said, I could have been erased that night, Jesse. And I feel like this being able to tell my story. I dropped this book, the memoir, The Night Puff Tried to Kill Me. I dropped it in December. So all of these things that recently happened just basically keep piling on,
Yeah.
and they probably will pile on more. But just like Shine said in his Hulu doc and with ABC, like this is who he is. He is a bad boy. He is a menace and a predator, and a menace to society. And it serves me. I have to stand up because I'm standing up for the people, Jesse, that can't speak. There's people he flew in to have his fun with. There's people that are afraid to speak. after I dropped the book, some people came to me and said, "Hey, he barricaded me in the office and tried to, get in my pants." And these are people that didn't want to speak. That they don't want to be banished from the industry. There's a lot of hush hush going on out there because of the power and influence that he was afforded all these years. So for sure, like, I'm speaking up because I can. I'm not held down by any corporation. Nobody's going to stop my checks. I can speak. So I'm unfiltered at this point with the unbridled truth. This is just what the truth is.
And look, DeWitt, I actually would love to continue this conversation because I wish we had a little bit more time. So can you have an open forum here as all the developments happen with Sean Combs, as your case develops? Please, you have an open forum to come back on here and we could talk more about it. But look, I appreciate you taking the time. I know this must be a busy time for you, but thank you so much for sharing what is a really harrowing experience. I know it must not be easy for you to talk about it.
Hold these people accountable, Jesse. Not just the people that were aside of him, but also the people that have amplified him and that are hush hush at this moment. They're hush hush.
It's an interesting moment too, to see how big this and expansive this criminal case will be, and all the lawsuits that he's facing too. But
you can't amplify somebody on one end and then go hush hush after you see the CNN beatdown. You just can't.
That changed everything. That video changed everything. That validated a lot for people.
That's right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jesse.
Thank you, DeWitt. Really appreciate it. Nice meeting you. Thank you. So there you have it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here on Sidebar. And as always, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. Speak to you next time.